we're going to be talking about story right now. Okay. When I look at story and when we're considering what we're doing here and building a story, in a relationship economy, story is our currency. It's our ability to make sure people can connect to us and to what's going on. It's our ability to help people feel empowered and make sure that they have the ability to be the hero in the moment. And then we are just being the sage. We're the guys who are along the way helping them make it through on their journey. If we can really consider this and we start telling stories that way, we can truly affect a ton of change in the way that people view us. And back to what I was saying about mission, vision, values. If we have our clarity around mission, vision, values, and we're utilizing story to be able to speak about our mission, vision, values, and we're essentially showing people what we want them to believe about us by the stories that we tell. We're showing people what we want them to believe about us by the stories that we tell. And so I want to start off by talking about a couple of things. The very first thing I want to make sure is just going to be a tiny little soapbox for me right now in this economy. And when I say economy, I mean like literally the economy, not this story economy. I'm talking about this economy happening right now. There's a lot of people who are doing this waiting moment. They're waiting to see what's going to happen. They're in this waiting phase. And I want to encourage you guys to make sure you're stepping away from the waiting phase. If we begin to wait, we're going to lose a lot. A lot. So it's our turn. It's our time to be able to tell our story. If we wait, we're going to lose momentum. We're going to lose business. We're going to lose some of our finances. Our mindset is going to start shifting. We're going to have some challenges in our mindset game. We're going to have a passion that's going to kind of fizzle a little bit. Our relationships, right? If we wait to see what's going to happen with the rest of the world, our relationships will begin to tank as well. I wonder what else is out there that if I really stop and wait for somebody else to help me understand what to do next, what am I losing? And so my encouragement to every single one of us as we're jumping in today is do not wait. Measure the cost of waiting and know that it is pretty heavy. We've got to make sure that we're moving forward. And so we're going to talk practically about how to craft a story. Now, here's what you're not going to get. I'm not going to tell you how to go to Facebook and create a story in your Facebook. I'm going to talk to you about how do I create the story of what I'm doing every single day in the thread of my business or the thread of whatever it is that you're showing up to listen to. Like if you're talking about, just your family, if you're a blogger, if you're a writer, if you're anything, as I am building my version of who I am through my mission, vision, values, my story is how I captivate the audience to let them know that. That's how they know how to interact with me is through that story. And so one of the very first things that I'm going to tell you to do is you've got to begin to start practicing story. And the way that I would practice story is two things. The very first thing that I would do very practically is to create a gratitude journal, okay? And here's the reason why I would tell you to create a gratitude journal. Everybody's been talking about this. I've talked about it about 25 times. I'll probably talk about it again because it's a great tool for mindset. But here's why it's a great tool for practicing story. When we get into this mindset of practicing a gratitude journal, if you are doing it in a way in which it is reflective, you're going to naturally start digging into yourself. When you start to unearth some of those things you're grateful for, really what you're doing is you're searching for a connection. You're searching for some sort of connection. And here's my point. If I were to start writing down my gratitude, and I think, gosh, my wife, I'm incredibly grateful for her. And as I begin to search for the reason why, right? And this is a big piece of the puzzle. If I'm going to start digging into my gratitude and I start to go for the reason why, I am training my brain to start thinking a little bit differently because we stop at, man, I'm so grateful for Ellen. And then I'm also grateful, right? We pause for a second, but then we move on to the next thing. And really, at the end of the day, if you are only stopping at the object of your gratitude, you haven't really dug into the reason for your gratitude. And once we start to unearth the reason for our gratitude, man, you are practicing story right then and right there. And what you're doing, you're practicing the story that where you are the hero. And we're going to talk about moving that mentality for the story that you tell for the world. But to begin to practice the story, I need to write my gratitude and I need to come into the space of why. Gratitude in and of itself, honestly, is not enough. You've got to begin to dig into the why, okay? I want you to think about the why. I am grateful for coffee. A lot of us are like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm grateful for coffee. I am grateful for coffee. Why am I grateful for coffee? Because every day I wake up, man, that is something that just triggers my day. I know that it's going to be an amazing day when I get a warm cup of coffee. I know that the immediate next step that I take is into my recliner to begin to start ironing out what's going to happen for the rest of my day, to be able to dig into my success list. The reason why I'm grateful for coffee, there's a story being lined up in there. A lot of us really think that we are not good storytellers, and I'll tell you that. And for good reason. We've drawn ourselves away from the storytelling culture. But we really are good at consuming story and understanding story and feeling story. We just don't practice getting it out there for ourselves. We don't feel inclined to tell our own story. The way that you practice telling story and telling a great story, one of the easiest ways is to get into this idea of gratitude. Get into the mentality of going into a space of gratitude and how you can affect gratitude by, like, literally every single day showing the reasons why you're grateful and digging into all of the whys. It makes a huge, huge difference. And there's nothing too silly or too serious about a gratitude journal, right? There's nothing too silly or too serious. Like, I gave you the example of a coffee, but I could honestly give the example of, like, somebody on my team, David. I am incredibly grateful for David. He is just a balance for me in my business. If you've gotten to be around me, you'll see I run 100 miles an hour all day, every day. And David is a space of balance for me. And what he does is really help me to be the best version of me. He helps me to slow down and to understand how I can take what I have in my energy and translate it for everybody who's around me. Otherwise, I'm just a bouncy ball. He helps line me up to make sure I'm going in the right direction and the people around me can be impacted by what I have to offer. I'm grateful for David because of that. That's a really cool story to tell. And when you start, like, expressing this, you start practicing story, writing it down and going into the why, not just saying, I'm grateful for coffee. Why are you grateful for coffee? I'm grateful for my kids. Why are you grateful for your kids? I'm grateful for X, Y, and Z. At the end of the day, it's all going to be about why are you grateful for these things. And I hope this makes sense. And I hope that some of you are going, oh, this is a very duh statement of something I can immediately start putting into my business. Something I can immediately start changing the way in which I'm expressing myself to the world. It's something immediately that will cause me to be the best version of me. When we start telling story, again, the relationship economy, story is our currency. Think about the way in which we show up to listen and to watch story. Man, we are just entranced by story. Right now, there's so many people watching the, the Tiger King. Dude, talk about a captivating, crazy story to be able to just dig into and to watch. We are watching this nuts scenario just to unfold. We're just intrigued by it. The people who are binge watching something other than the Lion King or the Lion King, Tiger King, maybe you're binge watching the Lion King, I don't know. But everything that we consume, we're consuming things by story. So why would not the people who we are around want to connect to us in the same way? Story gives us the quickest way to align, can I trust you? All right, I wanted to say that again, and especially in your business. Story gives us the quickest way to align, can I trust you? See, I can figure out whether or not you care. I can figure out whether or not you can help me. But figuring out whether or not I can trust you. Story is our way in which we can do that. So as you begin to tell your story, you need to craft it in a way that helps consuming things by story. So why would not the people who we are around want to connect to us in the same way? Story gives us the quickest way to align, can I trust you?
I failed again.
I want to say that again, especially in your business. Story gives us the quickest way to align, can I trust you? All right. Sorry, there we go. I'm breaking things on the internet. Okay, so story gives us, we got to be able to get into the gratitude. The second thing I'm going to tell you is using the word because, okay? Because. When I look at anybody who I want to come into contact with, the people that I want to interact with, the people who I want a relationship, what I am looking for is to be able to start some sort of small talk, right? If I run into you, it's going to be some sort of small talk. It's going to be something real tiny, right? if I'm going to have some sort of real tiny little conversation, more than likely one of the very first conversations or the sentences that are going to come out of our mouth are like, how are you doing today? All right. Practicing story is an everyday process. Gratitude is a reflection. Because is going to become, it's an outward moment. So if somebody ever comes up to you and says, how are you doing? Our natural response is going to say, tired, busy, happy, good, fine, blah, 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 whatever it may be. You're going to immediately just go, oh, everything's fine. How are you doing? And we bypass this moment where we can tell this little bitty story to make sure people can connect to who I am, okay? Fill in that blank with because. How are you today? Man, I am tired because my kid stayed up all night long and we played until he passed out. And then I realized it was midnight and I had to get up at 5 a.m. One of my funnest nights I ever had. Talk about a way in which we connect like that. If I talked about that, somebody's going to look at me and go, tell me more. They're going to feel who we are. Or they're going to go, cool story, bro, and they're going to exit. See, we think that we're going to bore people and or annoy people and or fill in the blank people. Like we project this idea that we take somebody's feelings from them. We feel like what they're going to do, and then we make it up in our own brains. And the reality is that these things aren't happening these ways. People have a choice to whether listen to me or not would listen to me. If they wanted to be self-serving and they ask me how I'm doing so that they can move on to the next conversation, as soon as I answer, they're going to walk away anyways. But it's my time to be able to connect. See, I don't have to wait for somebody else to connect with me to bring connection to the table. So if I'm going to practice building a story, if I'm going to start practicing this idea of story, this culture of story, when somebody comes up to you and asks you how you're doing, you better respond with the because. I'm doing good, man, because right now, everything is as normal as it can be. So right now, it's good. What a great conversation. It more than likely will help you dig into more than just a small little cool, hi, bye, move on to our next thing. People are dying to connect. Like right now, people are dying to connect. They want to hear you and they want to see you. I love it, Jessica, making an emotional connection by talking. Like, and the way we make that emotional connection is to do more than just state the surface. Now, we don't have to get into our whole deep, dark secrets. We don't have to give away everything that's happening in our world. But how awesome would it be to actually answer the question that they ask? How are you doing today? Man, I am busy because I just closed 4 contracts today and things are going awesome. What an amazing story to tell. I'm going to kick my door shut. Give me 1 second. The joy of teaching from home, okay? Practicing gratitude. Gratitude, getting into the why. If you want to practice story, start writing a gratitude journal. It's going to do more than just mentally help your mindset and connect to things. When you start writing why you're connected to those things, why those things are bringing you gratitude, you're going to start unearthing your own version of the story for why you feel good, why it makes you feel great, why they're in your gratitude world. And in your brain, that self-reflection, you're getting the ability to attach to your own story. See, we don't tell stories now. We're self-gratifying. We're quick to do just gratification, instant gratification. We're not telling the story. We're not getting into the story culture. And the next thing is the because. Get into the because. I am great because. I am tired because. I am happy because. Whatever the because is, jump into that space and make sure you're connected to that. That will make all the difference, okay? So practicing story is a big deal. Now, getting into the idea of story, we are going to look at what's happening. If I'm going to be telling you the story, and this is where we're going to actually start translating it back into our businesses, okay? Because many of us are wanting to figure out how do we tell a great story about who we are in the business, and especially if we're looking at it as a currency. If we're looking at it as our currency, our ability to connect, our ability to bring clarification to who we are, our mission, our vision, our values, our direction for our life. If we really want people to understand who we are, we've got to be able to tell that story. And so here's a couple of things that I'm going to tell you that I have done in my world for a very long time to be able to get into the idea and the execution of story. And then I'm going to give you a resource. I'll tell you right now, just out of the gate, Donald Miller is much better at this than me. He's a professional of this. And so he's taken some of these things that I've done for a long time, and he's much smarter and actually made them much more concise. And I'm going to connect you to a couple of the resources that he has built for this idea, this mentality of creating story. But I want to tell you how to begin to craft it. So if you're looking at your social media, I'm not going to tell you how to shoot a video. I'm not going to tell you how to blast it out in advertisement. If you're looking for a how-to, this is not it. There's some great people out there for it. What I'm going to help you unleash is a little bit more of how you dig in to the content to be able to start building the story out of it. The very first thing I want to look at is, who is the character? If I'm going to be telling a story, I want to know who the character is, okay? Who is the head character? Who's the main character of the story? If I want to talk about something that's happening in my business and I'm going to go along the lines of benevolence or charity or those things that that we may line up, we're in a giving culture. If I'm going to line up with the giving things, I need to know who the character is. So essentially, that is going to be that client moment. The character is going to be your client. So if I'm looking out at the world and I want to tell a story about who I am, I want to tell a story about what's going on, I need to understand that the character is more important than who I am. And I need to make sure that what I'm crafting for the character. I have created in my world a very specific way in which I want people to interact with my my content. I create it very specifically. I think about the character. I think about who's out there. I think about who the story is going to be consumed by. And I'm very specific in the way in which I produce that content. So I want to think about who the character is. And when I think about the character, we need to personify them. And I actually saw James pop up here in a second ago. When he does his advertisement, he personifies like where this advertisement is going. When he personifies his marketing, when he puts out his content, he personifies who the person who is going to be consuming. So if I look at it and I want to make sure I'm bringing out a message of we are still busy and helping people buy or sell homes, well, then I'm looking to be able to talk to a buyer or a seller. What is a buyer or seller thinking, doing, acting, and behaving right now? How do they feel? What's going on in their world? If I start to really dig into that, and I know it sounds very conceptual, but if I start digging into that, I will feel more about who they are versus about who I am, okay? And here's why that is important. I think it's hilarious that we all start making decisions based off of our own filters as leaders, when if we started looking across the whole board of who our leader, who's underneath our leadership, I will guarantee you 9 times out of 10, they don't think the way you think. And so if you are building a step forward without thinking about the way that they think, then you are not leading. You're just going for a walk. A leader with nobody following you is just going for a walk. And then so if I stop and I think about the story that I want to tell about my business or even about content that I'm driving, I really want to stop and slow down and think about the character. And I want to write down who this character is. I want to feel who this character is. If it's a buyer or seller, right now, our buyers and sellers, they're scared. They're uninformed. They don't know what's going on. They feel a little weird. They don't have confidence. They don't know who to ask questions to. They don't know who the sources are. So if I'm putting out the content and I'm thinking about them as a character, my content should be driven into their space. If I'm doing everything about touting everything that's amazing and wonderful and awesome, I think that's a good thing to do. But yet, if we drive it into the space of giving somebody else confidence, that creates a better story because we've thought about somebody else. I love the idea of the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have done unto you, right? Treat people how you want to be treated. I like the concept of the platinum rule, to treat others the way they want to be treated. And the idea of finding a character is in that. So you've got to be able to understand who your character is. And if you practice this, you don't have to sit down and write it every time, but you can start to get into a rhythm of what your content is doing and where it's going to. And if I'm putting out something about the way a seller felt, I'm going to be able to make sure it's going in that world. If I'm putting out content just about how my life is going, I can dig into that space. If I want to be open and honest and transparent, I'm going to look at the way they feel. And I'm not going to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. I'm just going to make sure I fill in that gap with the story of who they are and where they're at. I'm not going to create a hero story out of something when people aren't ready to hear that yet. I'm going to start moving them in the journey of story. Okay? I know this sounds conceptual, and I know some of you probably have already checked out, and yet I'm going to tell you, when you practice these two things and you start to think about who your character is, I think your content will change tremendously. You won't just start copy and pasting memes anymore. You'll understand what it means when you've got to get on the Facebook and show your face to the world, and they need to see the nuances of who you are. You're not going to feel this weird moment of like actually typing out what's happening in your world. so that you can connect with people and they are able to see you for who you are. You're actually going to see people in a different light. Practicing these things to get myself into the motive story, understanding who I'm talking to and that they need me to speak to them the way they need to be spoken to. Like they need me to get onto their level. Okay? So what is the desired outcome? I know who my character is, and then what is the desired outcome? Do I want them to rise from where they're at? My content should deliver that story. It should help them along that journey. Shouldn't tell them what to do. It should help them along the journey. We're not telling people what to do. We're helping them along the journey. We're telling a story. So if it's about building confidence, we're going to start making sure that confidence is the story that we're telling, right? That's what we want to get them to. So we need to look at the character, and then we need to be able to understand what the desired outcome is going to be. I know this sounds like a lot, and yet it is. Because if we're really trying to build a better version of telling the people and telling the world who we are and getting people connected to that, we've got to be more than just copy and paste. And I think we're a lot of copy and paste. We see stuff that's like, oh, I can attest to that. I'll just paste it in. Or I don't know what to talk about my business, and so I just copy and paste my open houses. Or I don't know really how to do any of this stuff, and so I just regurgitate everybody else's version of their story. If we're very clear about where our mission, vision, and values are, and we want to take this in a direction, we can truly start doing that by telling the story that we want to craft for the audience that needs to hear it. Okay? So you've got to be able to know who your character is, understand what the desired outcome is. How do you want people to walk away feeling when they consume your content? Do you want them to laugh? Make sure you're making them laugh. And it should be funny. Funny is really hard. Be careful with funny. You're either funny or you're not. And people who are not funny, that think they're funny, they're probably not funny. It's probably coming off weird. Just FYI, I think I'm funny all the time. I'm only funny half of the time. And so most of the time, it's just weird. And Crystal's probably laughing right now. I don't see her face, but I can guarantee you. Crystal's my executive assistant. She makes fun of me a lot. Okay. If you want it to be encouraging, be encouraging. But you got to practice this stuff. This isn't just tomorrow you're going to be an expert at telling story. You've got to start practicing the storytelling culture. Easy for me to say. Okay? And then the last thing in this little space of going through this journey is, how can I help by elevating the hero? So I know who my character is. Who's the hero? I'm going to give you a clue. You are not the hero. If we begin to tell a story where we are the hero, I'm going to tell you it's going to be a self-serving story. And this is not where we're at right now. We're not in a mode to start tooting ourselves, touting, touting. We're not in a space to start touting ourselves. It is in a space to start giving back and start to share and start to be part of a better together community. And if that's where we're at, this isn't a time to start talking about myself. We are never actually the hero of the stories that we tell. We get to take a very cool seat of the sage. We're the Yodas of the story. We're the Haymitches of the story. And I'm stealing content directly from Donald Miller by using those as example, because he has really versed this in a beautiful, amazing way. So Donald Miller wrote a book. It's called Story Brand. And some of you may have read it. If you haven't, a lot of what I speak on when it comes to story, I've just started regurgitating his words because they're much more eloquent than I am. This is mine, but the rest of the stuff, talking about the character and stuff, like those are things that I did, and yet he's opened those things up to make it much more understandable than the way that I would do it. So I would highly suggest to pick up that book and start to open it up and understand how I can start marketing a message from my story, from my own world, from who I am. Some of you are looking at it, and I've mentioned mission, vision, values before a couple times. You may not even be connected in understanding what mission, vision, values look like. So I've got some recordings. I'll make sure I post them every stinking where, because I want y'all to understand, like, once we have this mission, vision, value set up and we have clarity around that, man, our story is going to kind of boil up inside of us, and it's going to want to be told. We just got to start practicing story. And the way we do that is to practice your gratitude and understand the why. I am grateful for this because we got to get into the why. When somebody comes up to you now in this starting, all right, so now we're talking about connection. We want to start practicing story by telling a story to somebody else. We're going to answer it because. So gratitude gets us internal, because gets us into a space of when they say, hey, how are you doing today? We're going to answer, I'm doing great because. We're going to throw because into everything. We're not going to let a blanket statement of I'm fine and move on to the next one. We're going to start practicing telling our own story to see how it lands, to see how we can start incorporating story into our days, because once we become masters of story, we're unstoppable. Your message will be louder than anybody else's. And then the last thing is to get into the space of like the actual arranging or the crafting of the story. I look at it simply from the 3 steps of who's the character, what is the desired outcome, and how can I elevate this hero? And it's not me, somebody else is the hero. How can I elevate the hero in this? There's a source, Donald Miller, an amazing dude. I think he's brilliant with the way he helps us to understand story. The stories that he tells are awesome. One of my favorite books is A Million Miles, 1,000 Years. It's about practicing a better story. So this guy's brilliant in that space, and he's a much better source for you to be able to have an expert space to go in and learn and understand how to craft your story at a high level. But if you don't want to do that, these are the things that you should be doing right now to be conveying your story to the world. And the way you tell your story is through face-to-face interaction, handwritten letters, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Marco Polo, all the things that we can do to tell our story. And I'm going to tell you right now, the world needs to hear it. The world needs to hear our stories. I really do. All the people that I interact with so far, and people who are attracted to come in and sit in these classes and listen to the things that I have to say, every single one of you, I promise you, if you're connected to me, there's probably a reason for that. There's probably a dynamic moment of we are like-minded. And if we are like-minded, which I think we are, the world needs to hear your version of the story. It needs to hear what's going on. They need to hear who you are, because they need people who have passion and desire to do something greater than just to exist. This is our time to captivate this moment. I want to read you an excerpt from a book. I share this all the time when I teach mission, vision, values, and I really think it can land pretty well right now, today, with where we're at. And this is this book, The Path, by Lori Beth Jones. My coach, Debbie Frapp, told me to read this book, and so I did, because I listened. It says this: my uncle once told me that during World War II, if an unidentified soldier appeared suddenly in the dark and could not state his mission, he was automatically shot without question. I wonder what would happen if we reinstituted that policy today. Being confronted with life or death, need to examine one's mission would force millions of us to re-examine who we are, what we're really about. It would save immeasurable amounts of money, tears, and heartache. Absenteeism would drop, productivity would soar. Leaders of Congress, corporations, institutions, and associations would be forced to exchange rhetoric for real, meaningful action. People who linger in the shadows, leading unfulfilled lives, would burst into the sunlight of possibilities and power. Those who have never known what it's like to feel the passionate commitment to a cause would be catapulted from their couches onto the playing field, tasting the dirt, feeling the sweat and the sting of tears, and having the wind knocked out of them. And in the process, becoming fully alive. Those who have never breathed the deep lilac smell of victory or felt the tingling thrill that comes from having accomplished a mighty task would suddenly know deep down in their bones that they are here with a purpose far greater than to survive. That is truly what I want to see, and why I show up every single day as much as I can to tell my version, my story with the world, because I want people to come alive. I think people are dying and desiring, and just think the passion is there for people to get there. And we just need to be the ones that help them unlock that. When you tell your story properly, people can connect with what's possible. And when they see what's possible, their whole world is elevated. You just may be the key to unlock somebody's world. I really believe in that. I think that I have the ability to change the world. And I think the more of us who think that way will actually make a difference in changing the world. We're just crazy enough to do it. I'm going to give a second to pause. I know that I went through the main things that I wanted to handle, wanted to touch. Thank you for getting through some of the glitches there that I messed up on. But I want to see if anybody has any comments, any questions. Crystal, I apologize. I went into the live feed, and it's just different than it has been before. So if there's anything, any questions and comments over there in the Google Meet, feel free to unmute yourself and just to say those out loud, so that then I can hear them, because I'm not going to click back and see them and mess up the feed. If you're on Facebook Live with us, feel free to go ahead and type your question in, and I'll be happy to unearth any of these things, or even just anything that was an aha for you, anything that really made a big difference, let me know, because I'd love to hear it. Difference makers. I like that, Casey. If there's anybody and there's no question that can't be asked, I'll figure out if I can answer it or make up an answer for it. My product placement today, I got Goosehead with the Sacchieri brothers. Sacchieri group, Goosehead. There you go. Nothing, and it's okay if there's nothing out there. Crystal, is there anything out there on that side?
No, there's nothing over here.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to copy and paste this bad boy right here into the comments, and I will, when I end the live video, Crystal, I'll come over there and post it as well. Donald Miller has a structure for helping you craft story, and he's created this. It's mystorybrand.com. He's going to ask you to sign up for his newsletter and all that stuff to be able to get this free resource. I would highly recommend doing both of those things. He's got an amazing podcast. The way we practice story beyond this is to listening to stories and to be reading stories, and he's a guy who goes out there and he grabs them for us. So be connecting to all of the things that are going to help you be better. Everything that you consume should create an action. So I'm going to ask you, the one action that I'm going to ask you is in your gratitude journal to not just say, I'm grateful for, fill in the blank, move on and say you've accomplished something. I want you to dig into why. My one action item for you is to dig into the why. We have a great tool that we can use to help our mindset and help us to be able to connect back to story. And I wonder how our feeds would show up differently when we look at this world through the eyes of filtering our gratitude into story. Okay? Y'all are awesome. If you need anything, you can always email me, randyolive at kw.com. I'm down for any help, any questions, any comments, anything. I'm here for it. I love doing this. This is my jam. I'm in my element. So if you need anything at all, by all means, give us a shout out, okay? Peace out.